welcome to Looking Up. This is a podcast for Christian women. I'm Kathy Pollard, one of your hosts, and with me is Carla Moore, your other host. And today we are both in Bowling Green, Kentucky, recording together, having a conversation in person. This will be way more fun than you being all the way in Texas. And you can tell everybody why you're in town and what you're here. I know you didn't come here just for my birthday.
Oh, I did. I arranged everything around your birthday.
Thank you so much. Yeah, why are you here really?
John and I came to be in Richmond, Kentucky. We're going to get all kinds of wind noise and hair blowing and doors flipping and wind chimes. It's going to be great.
Yes.
So we were in Richmond, Kentucky for Ladies' Day and men's lesson, and then we came down here to Bowling Green on Sunday afternoon to see you and to get to be together. And yesterday we went to the Ark.
Yes.
This afternoon we're going to go to Denver for graduation. But The Ark was fun, wasn't it?
The Ark was really fun. We've been here for almost 4 years and never gone, and everybody always talks about how great it is, so I'm glad we got to go. It was huge.
Yeah. How many steps did you get? Did you ever look?
No, I didn't look.
I had about 11,000.
That's a lot.
Neil said he had 10,000 more than I mean, not more than I had, but he had 10,000 when I was only at like 7, so he was probably just walking baby steps.
Yeah, he shuffles. Just kidding.
But it was so well done. I was so excited to see something that was Bible-based, that a lot of money had been sunk into that, which, to make something well done, you have to have money. So I was glad that they had done such a great job, and things I hadn't thought about. What were some things that you noticed that you didn't really think about?
Well, you're the one that kept bringing up really good points as we were walking through it. And the thing that kept coming to my mind just from the sheer size of it is when you read that one little phrase in the Bible where the ark came to rest on Mount Ararat, or however you say that word. And when you see how big it really is, just that taking place and what that would have sounded like. Oh, that's one of the things that we talked about was
the lightning and thunder.
They had sound effects while you're walking through the ark of animals and rain and thunder and lightning, and what that would have been like for them to hear probably for the first time ever.
Right.
And, what were they experiencing throughout that? And were they worried? Were they fearful? Or were they just trusting in God to keep them safe?
Yeah, and they had some of the, they kept saying, we don't know about a lot of these things, but like ventilation system, they had something, I can't remember exactly what it was called, but like a moon shaft, I think, something like that, where it was a shaft that would have gone from top to bottom in the ark, where that was open to the waves below, so that when the ark moved with the waves, the water would come up and it would bring fresh air in from up above and just ventilate the ark. And I can't explain it because I don't understand completely, but it made sense. They had a little video that they showed that made ventilation and how they would water the animals and feed the animals
and keep them clean with all the different reptiles. And I think probably that was my favorite part of it is I feel like they came up with every single question anybody could possibly ask. But what about this? But what about this? Yeah. And they had all that information everywhere. And then they had a representation of each of the different kinds of animals.
Like the dinosaurs, they only needed two small ones that would replicate and recreate and other.
Right.
They needed the kind, not necessarily each kind of dinosaur.
Right.
Yeah. And one of the things, we didn't talk about this since then, but we were talking about, did the rabbits populate and did they eat rabbit? But I didn't even realize that they were vegetarian. There were things in Scripture after the flood, they were able to eat meat. But before the flood, now I need to go back and look at it, but they had passages that talked about all of these green things you can eat. So apparently they weren't omnivorous. Is that the way to say that?
That sounds right to me.
Until after the flood. So it was very interesting.
It was definitely worth the trip. It was a 3-hour drive each way, and we were crammed into the back of Neil's little truck.
But we had
with
fun.
all the snacks.
Yeah.
I'm glad we did it.
Yeah. We need to do a snackle box next time.
A snackle box.
That looks like so much fun.
So look at our shirts. We're wearing our Looking Up shirts because actually, was it yesterday that we hit 20,000?
Maybe even the day before.
Yes, and that's just podcast listens. That doesn't count YouTube views. So we're so thankful for all of you who have listened and joined in on these conversations with us. And we're wearing our Looking Up shirts that Emily created for us, and just praying that God will continue to bless this podcast and our time together, and continue to be thankful for all of you who are listening or watching,
for
and
your encouragement.
for your
Y'all have been so
encouragement.
encouraging.
And your suggestions
Mhm.
for topics, or whatever we've talked about that day. When you chime in with your thoughts, we love that.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite parts, is all the interaction throughout the week after the new episode airs. We get to continue it with the great conversations with all of you, so we're thankful for that.
So our episode last week was a little long.
I was joking when we were recording that, have we gone 3 hours now, not realizing we had gone 2.
Yeah.
So we actually apologize for that. We did not mean to do that. We know your time is valuable, and we do not have that much good things to say. So.
Well, we have fun with it, but
we do.
We know that y'all have other things you need to do with your time. So,
and we're gonna try to be more mindful.
We have a timer.
We have a timer of keeping track of the times, so we're not just going on and on. We have lots to say to each other.
Well, we had 6 hours of it in the car yesterday, so maybe we got some of that out of our systems.
That's true. And we actually covered 3 topics. Yeah. We always think we might not have enough to talk about. And why do we do that? Why do we do that? But today we're actually talking about this idea of being dissatisfied, dissatisfaction in marriage, in your home, on the job, with your church family, whatever comes to with the way you look, with your health, the way your clothes are fitting, just all different areas that we can so easily become dissatisfied with. And it seems like once that takes root, it's really hard to let go of it. And it can affect our attitude and our speech and our outlook and how we treat those close to us and others. So we thought we would talk about that and really see if we can just get to what is at the root of that. And if we can figure that out, how can we address it? Yeah. How can we be better about it? So I thought maybe we could just start out with some of those different areas. And I ran across a quote the other day. I should have brought it with me so I wouldn't butcher it, but it was really about marriage. So we can, if you want, we can start off with dissatisfaction in marriage. But the idea was that we all come to marriage. Well, some people come to marriage with the idea that it's going to provide everything that you've been missing in your life. So I want romance, and I want marriage to provide that for me. I want love, and I expect to find that in marriage, and intimacy, and friendship, and completion, and all of these things that I expect marriage to fulfill and provide for me. And the quote was saying that basically marriage is just a box that we fill. And so if you want romance in your marriage, you have to put that romance in your marriage, or friendship, or intimacy, or respect, or companionship, all of these things. If you want that from your marriage, you're the one that has to put it in your marriage and fill that box. And it said the trouble is a lot of times we're trying to draw out more of that than we're actually putting in. And I'm expecting more from my spouse than I'm willing to put in. And so when I'm drawing out more than I'm putting in, what am I left with? An empty box. And then I'm dissatisfied in the relationship and the marriage and how things are going. And it seems like once you start thinking along those lines of getting dissatisfied, you start noticing more things in that relationship or that marriage to be satisfied about. And so I thought that might be a good place to start, is dissatisfaction in marriage. What are some ways that manifests itself, or how we respond to it, and then what can we do about it? What are your thoughts?
Well, it made me think about Romans 12. It was something that I had thought about years ago, about how we tend to wait. We wait for people to do things for us first, when really we should be the first one to do it. I'm going to put my glass down. But it talks about let love be without hypocrisy, abhor what is evil. I'm just going to read it because I won't remember it all. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Give preference to one another in honor, not lagging behind in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope. All of these things that it lists. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with marriage, but all of these are within marriage to the person that we love the most on this earth.
And relationships.
Yes. So I just remember thinking, But what if someone is not devoted to me? Or what if he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't love me? What if he does not bless me? What if he doesn't rejoice when I want him to rejoice with me? Or what if he's not sad when I'm sad?
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, well, what have I done? You know, what have I put in? So what if I love first? What if I'm devoted first? What if I'm patient first? What if I'm praying for him first? All of these things, if we do it, we'll receive it back. And that's not necessarily why we should do it. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
benefit of doing it. But it's just that we wait, and I see this in my own life so many times. We wait for someone to befriend me, or I wait for you to
Mm-hmm.
say hello to me because I think it's, I don't want to be awkward or weird or whatever. So I'm going to wait for that person to come to me and talk to me. But why can't I do it first?
Mm-hmm.
What am I putting in the box, like you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where my mind went with that.
Well, and especially in marriage, you usually you hear a great lesson on that or a Bible class on that, and it talks about that, that we should not be focused on the other person. We should be focusing on ourselves because I'm the only one that can change anything.
Yeah.
I'm changing myself. And it seems like once I decide that's right, I'm going to do better, and maybe I'll do it for a few days and think, he hasn't even noticed. He hasn't even said, he's not responding in kind like he's supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Or something happens and it's like, that's it, forget it,
Yeah,
I
I
tried.
tried for a day.
But that's not what it's all about either. It's not that we do all of that and expect some kind of acknowledgement or, hopefully it's noticed and responded to in the same kind of loving, thoughtful, giving way. But that's not why we do it, and that's
Mm-hmm.
not our motivation. And if we're waiting around for it to be acknowledged or noticed or a pat on the back about
Mm-hmm.
it, I think that'll just lead to more disappointment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm blessed in the fact that John, he melts. If I do all of those things for him, he just turns into a big pat of butter and melts, and I get so much back from him when I put a little bit in. I mean, if I put
Mm-hmm.
a little in, I get a lot back from him. And I think, unfortunately, I don't know if you could say that about me. Although it, I mean, it really does affect me when he treats me in a certain way. It's just a blessing to be married to someone like that. But I know not everyone is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think everyone can have an impact on their own marriage by what they put into it, like you've been saying. And Ollie's gonna enjoy my little Diet Coke. That's fine, Ollie. Have some drink.
No.
But just you be in charge of you and do
Mm-hmm.
what you should do, and a lot of times you'll get back even more than you put into it. I think.
Mm-hmm. And we were trying to think of a good title for this, the true root of dissatisfaction or the source of dissatisfaction. I'm not sure what we'll
Mm-hmm.
end up settling on, but really the answer is you're going to get out of something what you put into it. And that's true in all these aspects, but so true in marriage. And if I'm not doing my part, and first thing in the morning, it all goes back to that intentionality and praying that I can remove my selfishness and the focus on self and instead focus on my husband or the people in my family. And I'm going to take those first steps and focus on what can I do to put love into this box and thoughtfulness and and we know how to do that because we know the people that we love. And I know what makes Neil feel extra special because I've had time to learn that about him. And so I know what I can do to be intentional about that. And if I'm not doing that and waiting around for him to do it, as you said, then neither one of us are going to be happy. And it will be dissatisfaction. But the problem with that is once we go down that track, we start thinking it's everybody else's fault.
Yeah.
And or the circumstances fault.
Mm-hmm.
And that's most of the time not true. I'm not saying that others can be responsible for creating problems and heartache and hurt and pain. We all know that's true. But when it comes to dissatisfaction, it seems like most of the time, really, it's because we're not doing our part and we're not investing and putting into the relationship.
It's a mindset, and I think we just have just a terrible problem with this these days. These days, but playing the victim.
Ugh, yeah.
And I've seen myself do this in my own marriage and my own just relationships in general, when you just start thinking that way, it's just a vicious cycle that spirals downward, and you just kind of have to shake yourself. But you can't shake yourself if you don't realize you're doing it, and if you're not um, being on the alert and being aware that you're heading that way. I know we've talked about this before, but I feel myself sliding down into that valley of victimization, and it's ugly. It's ugly.
Have you ever caught yourself, maybe something aggravated you that your husband did? Not that John ever does anything to aggravate you.
Yeah.
But let's, hypothetically speaking,
Okay.
say something did happen and you started sharing it with a good friend. Maybe I started sharing it with you. I started sharing it with my sister. And as I'm saying it out loud, it's dawning on me. It's pretty petty.
Yeah.
As I can hear myself actually saying out loud what frustrated me or what I'm so aggravated about, or I don't get this, I can hear how petty it is. And usually somebody with an outside, a more objective perspective is probably thinking the same thing, and they're kind of going, "You're really just being ridiculous."
Yeah.
And maybe you can look at that differently.
Yeah, and we've had this conversation, haven't we, about using wisdom in saying, not saying maybe you're being ridiculous, but but sometimes you recognize a certain look from somebody else.
Yeah.
Oh. But even when, like you said, when you're saying it out loud,
saying it out loud sometimes,
it's helpful. But even that sometimes, we've talked about this with certain groups, how it just feels like gossip, and it feels like just vent. We'll say, I'm just going to vent. I just need to vent. And we have to be
a safe space.
Yeah. And we have to be wise about that, because we don't want to say and do things that we shouldn't say and do. But with someone that's trusted, and someone that you trust that will be truthful with you, and that has wants the best for you, and wants you to be spiritual in your relationships, and I mean, I appreciate that about you, and I know there are others, and but John's that way too. If I talk to him about a situation, he may be silent, and if I know he's silent, but he's not saying what he might want to say,
That's so true, because Neil's the same way. That's pretty much the litmus test, come to think of it, now that you say that. Because, if I am going on about something that aggravated me or frustrated me, and he reacts like, what? Well, blah, 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 I can tell that he feels that same frustration. But if he doesn't say, if he's pretty quiet and he just goes,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's...
Without saying a word, he's saying a lot of words.
Exactly. You can kind of hear yourself petering out. The more you talk about it and the quieter they are, it's like, well, maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah. And having a sense of humor helps in that situation, where you can just, depending on, how mad you are about something, but if you can go, wow, I really am being ridiculous, aren't I? And then you laugh about it. That doesn't happen to me super often, but it has.
Yeah, a couple of days later.
Give me some time. Yeah.
A couple of days later, yeah.
Well, I was looking at some of the synonyms for dissatisfaction, and just these were eye-opening to me. Like,
oh boy,
they're even just ugly sounding. No. Disgruntled.
That's a pretty face. A disgruntled face on a woman is so attractive.
Yeah. Maybe let's not try.
Let's not try it.
Discontented, annoyed, begrudging, bothered, complaining, disappointed, irritated, and vexed. That's just a picture of a nice-looking woman, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't want to be that way.
No.
But how easy it is to fall into that.
Yeah. So I was looking at the definition. It's always helpful to me to look at the definition, because sometimes it means something different. So it's a feeling of displeasure or disappointment or disquiet. So dis everything. It's just bad.
Yeah. Somebody that's hard to make happy.
Yeah. Oh. Ugh. I've been there. I've been there. Well, so what other areas?
Wait a second, I have a question.
Okay.
So what are the opposites? What are the antonyms then of dissatisfaction? Did you look that up?
Is gruntled the opposite of disgruntled? I don't think so.
Well, the opposite of dissatisfaction is easy if you just say satisfied.
Yeah.
But I just wondered if there were some other words that would be goals to reach for and sound better and be better descriptives of me as I would want somebody to think of me.
Yeah.
Not as a woman who's disgruntled and that just sounds horrible.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I think of is someone who is always the same when you see them.
Mm.
And I mean that in a good way. Like
Right.
they're always cheerful. Not everyone's not going to have a great day, a wonderful day every day. And
Mm-hmm.
so that person that
Right.
always seems cheerful and always seems on an even keel, they have bad days too. But
Yeah.
apparently they have done things that they needed to do to make them content no matter what. Like Paul says, being content in whatever situation you find yourself in.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe the opposite of annoyed is being content. I mean, if you're not annoyed, you would be happy.
Patient, gracious. Mm-hmm.
And complaining, so that would be intentional to not complain, to always see the positives in
Not
things.
complain. What do you think we are? Superhuman?
Well, are we supposed to be spiritual humans?
We don't even have time to go into all the verses that talk
Yeah.
about not complaining.
Yeah, right.
Ugh.
But vexed.
Vexed.
Someone who's always vexed, and
Mm.
no, I don't want to be that way.
I don't want to be that way either. You were talking about, when we were talking about sharing it with somebody, being careful about who you vent to or share with. I wonder if maybe we should just start with God when we do feel that way. And if saying it out loud to a spouse or a dear friend helps you kind of hear how petty it is, what if we said it out loud to God first? Because sometimes when I'm praying in a mood, I'm too generic. Just help me get through this, or whatever's going on, just help us work through it. Instead of this is what's aggravating me, this is what I feel. If I actually force myself to spell out what I feel dissatisfied about, maybe I'd hear that pettiness when I'm talking to God about it, and He can help me see my heart and realize that it starts with me, and have I been putting into it like I should have?
Right. And I was thinking about that too. I had highlighted, have we prayed about it? Because there have been times that as I'm saying the words, like you're saying, when you say something like, God, my husband is not being the way I want him to be, and it just, when you hear it, and then it just opens up the door for you to start thinking about all of the ways that he's wonderful, and it just makes us be more intentional about finding the good and finding the positive, and not being so hard to please and so petty, like you say. Petty is such a good word for this topic. Being, it's just a good word.
You know how when you're talking to somebody and they kind of give you a hard time, they razz you about it, and they go, "Oh, poor thing. Oh, you're not getting the attention you want. Oh, do you need some attention?"
Who does that to you?
Anyways.
Yeah.
Maybe we could hear ourselves in our own head in that tone.
Yeah.
It's so real to me, the things that are vexing me.
Yeah.
But if I could in that tone say, "Oh, but he's not being as romantic as I want him to," maybe we'll realize, just quit being so.
Call the wambulance.
Call the wambulance.
Yeah. I know there's lots of other humorous ways of saying that.
Okay, now before we move into a different area, we had looked up a few verses. Do you want to share a couple of those?
Yeah.
Along this idea of you get out of something what you put into it. It's a biblical concept.
Yeah. Well, one of them, 2 Corinthians 8, verse 7, as you abound in everything, in faith and utterance and knowledge and in all earnestness and the love that we inspired in you, see that you abound in this gracious work also. So abounding is intentional and helpful, and I think also Proverbs 11:24. There's one who scatters and yet increases all the more, and there's one who withholds what is justly due, and yet it results only in want. The generous man will be prosperous, and he who waters will himself be watered. Luke 6:38, give, and it will be given to you. They will pour into your lap a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. For by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you in return. So, what are you measuring out? What are you pouring into it? I just think so many times it's up to us to put into something more than what we expect to get out of it.
What are you watering?
Yeah, exactly. Of course, there's the verse about that Paul that he's content in any situation, Philippians 4:11-13. So there's lots of good ones. Did we talk about 2 Corinthians 9:6-7?
I don't think so. You did the chapter 8.
That one's a big one. 2 Corinthians 9:6-7. He who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will reap bountifully. Each one must do just as he's purposed in his heart. Hey, Leon. Not grudgingly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. Are you giving some love?
Now Ollie's jealous. He's like, let me up there. Yeah, and all of these have to do with our own generosity and being the ones to be the first to give. And the more we do that, the more we give, the more we water, the more we abound in that grace, which in context in 2 Corinthians 8 was about giving, sacrificial giving. Then we'll be blessed.
Yeah.
Then we'll be watered.
More, Mom. Well, I was just thinking through that and looking at it this morning and thinking how much is up to me. If you sow one way, you'll reap the same way, whether it's a lot or a little. And so also, as he's purposed in his heart, so how intentional am I? That's thinking about it ahead of time.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So you're preparing your heart and you're deciding ahead of time. But then what I had written down was, have I prayed about it, like you were just saying a minute ago. There's just been so many times caught up in sin too. If you stop and pray, and it can be sinful if we're discontented and disgruntled about something. It can really be sinful, but if we ask God and tell Him what we're struggling with and hear ourselves say it out loud, it's just helpful. Stops us in our tracks sometimes.
It does. So do you want to move on to a different category of dissatisfaction?
Well, I had written down some of the things that I find myself dissatisfied with in my own life. And, well, of course, there's always the weight and the shape, But then I think, okay, how did I get here? And I know sometimes hormones and sometimes family genetics and all that stuff enters into it. But I also look at that bag of Dots pretzels that those sweet ladies gave me from Richmond, Kentucky this past weekend. And, when I'm putting...
Is the bag empty?
No, it's not empty, but it will be before too long. But I think it's me. I'm the problem here. Which is a whole other topic there, isn't it? But there's things I can do about it. I don't have to stay that way. And I know it can be harder sometimes, and we get frustrated because we think we're doing what we need to do, and the scale's not moving, or the clothes don't fit any better. But I think, well, either I do something else different, or I just get over it and just love the shape that God's given me and enjoy the Dots pretzels.
You get out of it what you put into it.
Literally, right?
You get out of it. And, when I get so frustrated, and we've talked about this a lot. Yeah. When I am so dissatisfied and frustrated, Neil is very patient with me and listening to me. But every now and then, we have the same day, together. We ate the same thing. And he'll get up and weigh, and he hasn't gained anything. And I get up and weigh, and I didn't eat near as much as he did, but I'll gain weight, and I'll be like, I can't believe that, and I start expressing dissatisfaction. And he'll kind of quietly say, well, I also ran 6 miles this morning.
Whatever.
And I didn't, and I know that a lot of times I'll say to him, he's fixing to get on the treadmill, and I'll say, will you run some of those miles for me too, please? But
wouldn't that be nice?
Unfortunately, it doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. And I can't keep complaining about it. If I'm not going to do anything about it, at least stop complaining about it. And at least have the mental grace to not obsess about it and be dissatisfied. But I want to be able to not have to exercise or not be careful about my dietary practices, and stay looking the way I want to look, but it doesn't work that way. And if I'm not willing to put the work into it, at least have the grace to not be caught up in it and get dissatisfied.
Yeah, and whine about it all day long like I do sometimes. Or just that, I've thought, and I know we'll talk about this probably, it'll be a whole podcast, I'm sure, but how much mental space do I give to that? And it bothers me sometimes how much I think about that, like my weight or what I look like, or how the clothes fit and all that. And I just think, how much time am I spending thinking about something that really is not important
Mm-hmm.
in the first place. You know, it has nothing to do with my spiritual condition.
Neil said something really hard for me to hear not too long ago, and he finally said, usually he just, if I weigh first thing in the morning, which I always do, and I'm not happy with what showed up, I typically go growl or something, and usually he'll go, I'm sorry. But one day recently, he finally said, I hate how whatever you see on that scale affects the rest of your day. I always kind of guess what kind of mood you'll be in the morning based on what happens when you get on that scale. And that was hard to hear. And it is petty. And I was embarrassed. And I think another thing that plays in that is comparison with other people, jealousy about how somebody else might look, but they're probably willing to put in the work, and maybe we do the same thing in marriage. I'm jealous of somebody else's relationship or somebody else's marriage. Well, they're willing to put in the work, and they're reaping what they're sowing. They're reaping bountifully from sowing bountifully. And it's the same with, I guess there are a few people out there that just have amazing genetics, and it doesn't matter what they do or don't do, they just look fantastic. But I think more often than not, if somebody looks fantastic, it's because she's taking care of herself.
Yeah. But even if they have fantastic genetics, why am I jealous of that? Why can't I be happy for her?
Right.
And sometimes I'm not. I guess overall I am, but most of the time I'm just like, why did they get that? So I mean that we probably should set that aside and talk about it, because it's a huge thing. I mean, it's a huge thing.
Need to make a note.
Well, we've talked about it so much, and because it is such a huge thing, but it's almost something I'm afraid to dig into, because it's going to reveal some things about me that I don't like, which I know in the back of my mind, but to say them out loud is embarrassing. But I know I need to do that. So anyway, that's one of the things is that I get dissatisfied with is my weight. And I mean, I've worked on it, and I've done better, but I'm still.
You look fantastic.
Well, and you do. Thank you. And you do as well. But even some of the things you say, like you are jealous sometimes of other people who look fantastic, and I think, well, you look fantastic, and you do. I mean, I think a lot of women would. I would love to have the shape you have, but that we can't think for someone else, because it's an individual thing, and so I'm not going to be jealous of you. I'm going to do what I can to basically make myself healthy. And again, here we are going down that road that we need to save for another one, I'm sure.
Well,
but that's such a huge one for women.
What you said is true with marriage too. The things that are making me dissatisfied in marriage, somebody else might be looking at my marriage and say, I'd give anything to have a marriage like that. And that's because usually the things that we're wrestling with are petty or things that we've neglected and we haven't nurtured. When we were chatting about this a little bit ahead of time, we were talking about the example of gardening, or any space that you care about in your home and your household or your yard or your garden, any space that you care about making look a certain way. You put a lot of time and effort into it, and you pay attention to it, and you think, these gnarly weeds are creeping up and they don't belong here, so I'm going to take the time to do the dirty work and uproot them and pull them out. Or this plant looks like it could use some nutrients. It's looking a little puny, and so I'm going to take the time to fertilize it, and I'm going to water it, and I'm going to pay attention to it. And it takes a lot of work to get a garden or a space or a home. If you want a home that's peaceful and beautiful, and a retreat where your family feels calm and content, and a place to escape the turmoil in the world, that takes effort and putting time into it. And if you're neglecting that and you're just letting things grow willy-nilly, and then you're reaping what you've sown. And it's just the same with our own health, our own marriages. Another topic that we might consider with the idea of dissatisfaction is the church family. And I tell you, I really have a hard time hearing hurtful things said about the church.
Guess it's still going.
I don't know. Hopefully this is still recording. We don't even know if we just lost our Let me see. Okay, not now.
iPhone storage full.
Okay, yeah, that might mean it's not going to video record anymore. We
It's
may have
done.
just lost that one.
Yeah.
Do we keep audio recording or stop?
Well, let's just keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was I saying? Oh, that when people
Church
say
family.
things about the church, and a lot of it is complaints. Nobody cares about me at that church, or nobody reaches out to me, or comes to see me, or whatever it might be. And I feel like so many times that's where we need to start. Is, well, what have you put into it? What are you watering? What are you investing in?
Mm-hmm.
How many people have you gone to see? How many people have you checked on, or sent a card to, or invited into your home for a meal? Or how many times have you been the first one to approach everybody when you show up for worship and greet them or hug them? Or, just, I feel like
it's a victimization.
It's a victimization thing, and you get out of something what you put in it.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of patience for that. I know I've been guilty of it myself, but it's very frustrating when, especially in ministry, like you and I both spend our lives in ministry, when you know what the answer is, and here we can say it on this podcast because we're not speaking as to someone in particular, but you just want to say, look, stop complaining about the Lord's body when you have not done what you need to do to grow the Lord's body, to help improve situations in the Lord's body. What are you doing? And so it may be hard to hear, but I think we all need to hear, what have you done to make this better? Instead of complaining about it, instead of venting in some group somewhere on Facebook, or even, just whatever you're doing that's not helpful, you need to just stop doing that and get busy. Just get busy.
Because it feeds that mindset. When you start feeling dissatisfied with your church family, you start noticing every little thing. And we are a bunch of humans with faults making up the body of Christ. And things probably will happen. Somebody will say something to hurt your feelings, intentionally or not. Somebody will disappoint you or let you down. But the solution to that is turn it over to God. Try to overlook it. That Proverbs, again, that we've mentioned before, it's your glory to overlook it. It is to his glory to overlook a transgression or an offense. And let it go. And let your solution be, what can I do to turn around and serve somebody else? What can I do to step up my game and invest in my church family?
And also remembering who it is that wants you to be dissatisfied and complaining and griping about the Lord's body, because the devil's behind that. And he's looking for every crack and every foothold and every way he can get in and get between people, and between marriages, and between church members, brothers and sisters in Christ. He just wants to get in the middle of it. And it frustrates me when we let him do that. And not even just let him do that, but we nurture it and we almost enjoy it. I just think John would say there's a lot of people who look like they were weaned on a sour pickle. And come on, if we are Christians and we have the best life, and why do we walk around with this discontented, disgruntled, unhappy, miserable view of the Lord's body and all of the blessings that God has given us? I think we don't see them as blessings. We just have a terrible mindset. So obviously we both feel pretty strongly about that.
And then the world looks at us, and why would they be drawn to that when we look just like everybody else in the world? And those types of dissatisfaction attitudes lead to disunity, division, all of those other negative things that Jesus prayed for unity right before he went to the cross. That's what was on his heart, and that's how precious it is to him. And just like in marriage, when you have a marriage built on people who are investing in love and companionship and friendship, it's a beautiful thing to see. It makes other people happy to see. You can tell when a couple has a good, healthy relationship and they're investing in each other, because you can see it and how they treat each other and their demeanor, and that they love to spend time together. And so true in the Lord's church too. You can see that, and you can tell when people are laying aside self and stepping out and being the one to give, serve, do, greet, love, smile. And that's contagious, and it's a beautiful thing to see, for people to see, and they want to be a part of that.
What you just said, laying aside self, that just seems to be the key of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Just to get over yourself, stop thinking about yourself, stop being so internal, and reach out. And I mean, that just seems to be the answer so often, is to do something for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that is your spouse in your relationship, like we're talking about, if if he makes you mad, this is hard to do, but if he makes you mad about something, do something sweet for him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and after all, but after all,
I
isn't that
know,
what God?
Yeah.
Isn't that what God did for us, though?
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
the whole we we offend Him with our sin, and yet He's the one that gave us the gift of His Son
Mm-hmm.
and made that sacrifice for us. And so we have that example of turning around and getting out of ourselves and doing something good for the person that maybe made us mad.
Mm-hmm.
And so often in my own life, someone that made me mad, it's because I had maybe an unfair expectation, or I just need to get over myself and stop being so internal.
You know how you can kind of think of individuals, and I know this sounds harsh of me to say, but it's true. And you think of them as high maintenance
Mm-hmm.
because they're never happy. They always have a complaint. They're always upset about something somebody said or did, or how something was handled and what they think should be done. And they're always that squeaky wheel, that they're just high maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of have to remind yourself, be patient, just try and be patient with them. But sometimes that's how we come across when we're dissatisfied in the church body or whatever it might be. And, when stop talking bad about the church, stop blaming it on the church, stop blaming it on the elders. And when I say stop, I'm addressing all of us. And instead, let's just say, what have I been putting into it? Because I'm going to get out exactly what I'm putting into it. And if I'm dissatisfied with how things are going, it starts with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every time.
It does. So maybe what we can do this week coming up when this podcast airs is to give some suggestions of things you can do to make things better.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in your marriage, in the church, in your home, with your family, with your kids,
Mm-hmm.
because it's always helpful to have practical, helpful things to do. What does this look like to make this better? What's the solution, or what is a solution?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I struggle with too, we kind of took that down a path, but bringing it back to some things that I struggle with personally are some certain relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and not necessarily John. That is going to be something because it's a daily thing,
right?
That we're always having to
daily watering.
Yeah, and bringing it back. You start getting off track, and
Mm-hmm.
I can feel it happening, and we just have to reconnect and
Mm-hmm.
talk about it and bring it back. But just relationships in general can be hard,
Mm-hmm.
but they're so relationships. That's what is so fulfilling in life, is friendship and
Mm-hmm.
and family. But there are certain relationships, kind of like what you were talking a minute ago, that are just harder than others.
Mm-hmm.
And why are they hard? Is it because of how I respond? I think about when a certain person is going to act a certain way when you see them, and so you go in expecting that, and you kind of, I guess I feel like I put a wall up sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
That's on me. Why can't I just go in and just grab them and hug them, and instead of having that expectation, which we've talked about before, how expectations are just premeditated resentments.
Yes.
You
Disappointments.
mm-hmm, yeah, because you're expecting it,
Mm-hmm.
and people tend to rise to the level of expectation. And if it's a low expectation,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be pretty low. So, to me, that's a big one. And there's not a whole lot of people that I struggle with, but there always is going to be, because we just have different personalities and
Mm-hmm.
different likes and dislikes, and so we have to work harder at those.
Yes, and when you said something about why can't I be the one to just be warm, and I was thinking about almost love me. Why can't you love me? And I'll love you, and I'll just love the stuffing out of you until it happens. And I think, though, when I think about different relationships, if I'm dissatisfied in a friendship, and we've probably heard friends say that or felt that ourselves, that I felt like I was the one that was doing all the work, and They never called me, they never texted me, they never were the ones to say, hey, let's get together. We can start feeling dissatisfaction creeping into those types of relationships too, but it seems like the ones that disappoint us are the ones that we care about more and we're closer to. And, there might be a lot of relationships that we're trying to nurture because we're supposed to. And we're supposed to love our neighbor and we're supposed to love our enemy. We may not necessarily feel dissatisfied in those relationships because we don't have this sense of closeness and camaraderie with them. We're just trying to love them as we should. But it's the same challenge on either side of that, and it's exactly what you said. So many times it all goes back to just getting ourselves out of the way and practice the golden rule, do what Jesus would do.
Well, and
Be the first to act.
Yeah, I know this about me, that I am not great at keeping in touch. And
I'm not either.
I'm just, for whatever reason, I'll just skip all the excuses of busy or whatever. But what the people that I love and appreciate so much are the ones that just you pick up where you left off. And there aren't any, well, you haven't called, or where have you been? You get kind of passive aggressive messages from somebody that says, well, it's been so long since I've heard from you. I didn't know if you were still alive.
Right.
And I get it. I get why they're saying that, and I feel it just makes me feel bad. But I just appreciate so much when you're able to just pick up where you left off. But I think what I appreciate about that is that they're understanding, and they don't have an expectation of me to, it's not a check mark. Did she text me this week, or did I hear from her, or just things like that. It exhausts me to feel like I have to check off a box in a relationship. So I love people, and I pray that I am this way, that it doesn't matter how long it's been since I've heard from you, because when was the last time I reached out to you, So
not taking it personally.
Right.
And assuming that it's something that you did, or they don't like you, or they don't have time for you, and quit putting bad motives or assumptions on something, and not, just don't take it personally, and give everybody grace. And how true for all the different areas that we've talked about, though.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that kind of obviously hits me in a sore spot, I guess, because I feel bad about it. I feel guilty about it. That's a whole nother topic right there, is feelings of guilt for the things that you don't feel like you're doing right, or you can't possibly live up to, or whatever. But
taking on guilt when you really don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah. And am I a person that's making someone else feel that way? And I don't want to do that.
No.
Well, what about financial dissatisfaction?
Oh, that's a good one. I didn't even think about that. That's a really good one, because you might wish that you could do this or that, and now the chickens are chiming in.
Yeah, they have an opinion.
But you get out of it what you put in it.
Yeah.
A lot of times we can make wiser, smarter choices, be better stewards, and be mindful of, and it involves sacrifice. I remember listening to a podcast one time where somebody was saying, it must be nice to be able to afford organic raw milk at $12 a gallon or whatever it is, but as for me and my house, we can't afford to do that. We have to get ours from Walmart, or whatever. And it must be nice to do this.
Anytime you say it must be nice,
it must be nice, exactly. And her response was, we drive a beat up car.
Yeah.
We've had the same car for 12 years. We don't get the latest cell phone every year. We don't have streaming. We have made choices to what's more important to us, and the reason we can afford raw milk at that price is because we're sacrificing other things, because we've decided that this is more important to us than that. So, and she was like, you're making that sarcastic remark to me on your brand new cell phone.
So, moral of the story is mind your own business.
Exactly. M-Y-O-B. Quit making comparisons. Think about your own choices and your own. What are you putting into it? What am I putting into it?
I remember my dad saying that these things lead to covetousness, but what he would say was, having too little is bad because you want more. Having too much is bad because you're still coveting.
Can
even
never be
though, yeah,
satisfied.
it's just
Yeah.
a lack of satisfaction,
Mm-hmm.
and so we have to be careful not to. Either way, if we feel like we want more, or if we have plenty and you're still, socking it away because you're afraid of what the future might bring, just
Mm-hmm.
having a proper view of money and finances, and that's difficult to get to
Yes.
because
Yes.
when you don't have enough, there's always that feeling of worry about being able to pay your next bill, and I get that. I mean, I think we've all been there.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you have enough, there's the danger of being satisfied
Mm-hmm.
and relying too much on those financial or just things. So
Mm-hmm.
trying to,
Trusting in those
mhm,
things.
yeah. So I was thinking,
Mm-hmm.
I wrote down Luke 12:15, beware of covetousness. That life isn't about the things that we have. It's not. Life isn't in the things that consist. I can't remember exactly how it's said, but it can lead to covetousness. And then Colossians 3, of course, our theme. Just keep
Mm-hmm.
looking up, quit looking around at the things here on earth, but look up at
Mm-hmm.
what's really important.
Good.
What
That was a
about
good one. I
what
hadn't
about
thought
your
about that.
relationship with God and being dissatisfied with that?
And to me, that's the pinnacle
Yeah.
of all of these. And, when you feel like he's distant or he doesn't listen or you're just going through the motions or maybe you feel cold in your relationship with him, you don't, some people say, word it like, I just don't feel his presence in my life or, things like that. And that's dissatisfaction in your relationship with God. And I think it's so good to step back and ask those exact same questions. And what have I been putting into this relationship? And what have I been investing in this relationship? Am I prioritizing time alone with God?
Well, I've always heard it said, He's not the one that moves.
Mm-hmm.
We're the one that moves away from Him. We move away from Him. But sometimes I think I've seen this with young people, especially, but I'm sure it's true of older people. When they get to a point in their lives where they feel like they've just been guilty of too much, that God can never forgive them,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's like they give up, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like well, I'm too far gone, so I might as well just keep going. He can never forgive me. But that's just such a wrong view of God, too.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me sad because we can never go too far away from God that He won't forgive us and want us to come back.
And is there somebody that wants us to feel that way,
Right.
that we're too bad, we're
Mm-hmm.
too broken, we're too tainted? It's not God that feels that way, never has been.
Mm-hmm.
But Satan wants us to feel that way. And I think that it's so easy for us to listen to those thoughts that plant themselves and take root in our hearts. And to really think about honestly my relationship with God, um, and what I had hoped it to be at this point in my life. Maybe you reach a certain age and you think, well, I thought that I would be more spiritually mature. I mean, kind of tying into this in my mind is Bible study.
Mm-hmm.
Are you dissatisfied in your level of Bible study? Do you think that you don't know, you're not good at it, you don't know how to do it, you don't feel like you're deep enough, or, again, you get out of it what you put into it.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to compare it to somebody else's relationship, somebody else's Bible study practices, but just take that honest first step yourself. And wow, got all kinds of things. That's Mr. Risk again. It says spam risk.
Oh.
Mr. Risk
I'm
is
on a
always
first
calling
I'm on a
me.
first name basis with spam. Well, yeah, that's all of that is so true. One of the things that I think about with a relationship with God too is our relationship with our earthly Father.
Mm,
And if you have, this is so important, I think, especially for young families who have young children, what how your children view their father
mm-hmm,
is often how they're going to view God. And if your earthly father is disconnected or harsh or unforgiving or demanding,
mm-hmm.
and of course, dads can't help but be that way some of the time
Sure.
because we all are.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think how sobering to think just how that's connected to how they're going to grow up seeing God. And if you have a father who loves and who is interested in the things that they're doing and involved in their lives, and they mess up, but the dad says, you know what, you're going to do better next time. All of
Mm-hmm.
that to me just grows into how they see God. So what a responsibility for fathers to have a good relationship with their kids. But it's also never too late to, if you've messed up in that area, to try to turn that around and give your kids a better view of God.
In all of these areas.
Right. Never too late.
Never too late.
Good,
you know,
good point.
maybe you have had a bad attitude about your church family. Maybe you've ticked off a lot of people in your church family because of your stinky attitude, and you don't have any friends.
Yeah.
You know how powerful it is to see somebody humble themselves, and how it can change your feelings toward them like that. And to see somebody humble themselves and in tenderness come forth with an apology, and I've been wrong, and I've had a bad attitude, and I'm sorry, and I want to do my part to love like God. And I just feel like that melts, like you say, John turns to butter with, you know, some intentional steps taken on your part. And I think how that changes that goes so far in being forgivable, or I don't know what I'm trying to say, but people just want to surround that person and say, what courage, I love you, yes, let's do this together, yes, you're forgiven.
Why is that
yes,
so hard?
I don't know, but in marriage, have you been a cranky, dissatisfied, vexed wife? It's not too late. You know, we can humble ourselves, we can apologize, we can say, please help me do better, I want to try and do better. I'm going to try and work on this.
That, but it's so, it's such a good thing.
And sometimes for me, I think I'll come to that acknowledgement. I don't really want to say it out loud because then I'll have to be accountable for it. And what if I mess up again? But we need to. And in our homes, in our marriages, and all of these, in our relationship with God, it's not too late.
Yeah. John is the kind of guy that if I don't have to say it, and I should, I'm sorry. I should say I'm sorry, and I do. But I can just walk up to him and hug him, just put my arms around him and hug him, and he is, you know, he turns into that butter, like I said. But I, on the other hand, I tend to have more of I just need a little space. I'll hug you back, but I need a little space, and that is pretty rotten about me. And
yeah, we are the same person.
You and I, well, you can help hold me accountable because, and I don't think it's necessarily terrible that I need a little bit of space, but because I do, I'll forgive right away. But I just need. I'm not gonna just. Well, I'll go too far if I say too much, but you know, I need to be more. I just need to be that person that turns into butter. But what you're talking about, someone who might come forward, as we say traditionally, or just come before the congregation and say, I need help, I'm sorry, I've messed up. I think 99% of the people are going to rush up there and hug you, but we tend to think about that 1% who's going to say, well, what about this, or what about that? Why are we worried about them? We waste so much brain space on people who are not willing to forgive, or going to hold grudges or remind us of our past failures. And we just need to forget about them and pray for them because they have a heart problem when we're trying to make things right.
And isn't it true that when we are the ones with a bad attitude and we need to make some changes, we're not the only ones? And maybe our example of humility will help somebody else.
No doubt. See
that, you know what, I've been wrong too. And I've had a bad attitude in this whole process, or whatever situation, a family situation, or work, or church, or marriage, whatever it might be. If I'm more willing to lay aside some things, let go of some things, and just leave them in the past, and I verbalize that, it makes it easier for my husband to want to do the same thing. And you know, a bad attitude can be contagious, but so can a good attitude and humility. And you know what? Let's start over. Let's just start over and work together with God, and you know, enjoy the blessings and growth and the process of growing together in our Christian walk. Let's just grab hands and do this together.
Be the person that you want the other person to be to you.
Yes. Yes.
It's hard to do, but we need to do it. There was one other area that I thought of, and you may have others, and I know we need to wrap this up pretty soon, but I'm sitting here looking at your lush gardens and your chickens and your flowers. And I know how many times I've said I wish I could do that. But I think that there's times that I'm disappointed that I can't do things that other people can do. Whether it's a teaching talent or like your growing ability, maybe I'm an introvert and I wish I could be extroverted like whoever, There's those things. I wish I was someone else. So
I wish I was funny.
you're funny.
I'm not.
Yes,
I know some really funny people.
Well, I can't tell a joke to save my life.
I can't either.
I back up. I'll say, oh, wait. I meant to say this. And yeah, so I would like to be able to tell a joke.
I wish I was artistic and could make things look pretty.
But I took a picture of the table that you spread this morning with all those beautiful berries and nuts and yogurt. And
well, thank you.
You do.
But I understand what you're saying, that we can look at others and feel dissatisfied in our own, seeing things that we seem as in lacking because it's different and we can't do something like that. I mean, look at Lynn Height's ability to sew, and I can hardly sew a button, and everybody's going to have different talents and be able to use them in different ways. And
well, I think we spend so much time camped out and being dissatisfied with what we can't do.
It's the comparison thing again.
Yeah. Is comparison ever a good thing? I guess it can be a good thing if you are using it to make yourself better.
Well, Paul said, imitate me as I imitate Christ.
Right. But Paul also said that he learned to be satisfied in whatever state he was in.
Be content.
I probably mixed up a bunch of different translations there, but I think, okay, I'm going to sit down, and this goes against a little bit against how we've been taught, but think of the things you can do well, and make a list of them. There are a few things that I do fairly well, and so I can be thankful for that and get over the fact that I can't do what other people can do, or I can try to learn to do them. But sometimes you think you're not artistic. Maybe you can't paint. It's funny. You look at something on Pinterest. I tried to make those little turkey cinnamon rolls at Thanksgiving one year. They're just the Pillsbury cinnamon rolls, and then you make bacon, and you stick bacon in the tail to make tail feathers. And I can't remember what you use for the little head, but you put the candy eyes on it and the candy corn. And when I did it, I'm looking at this picture, and when I did it, the face starts melting off. And I, think, okay, well, I nailed that one. Anytime I try to...
Didn't you share a picture of that?
I did, because it was funny. It was funny. But so there's a whole category of Pinterest fails. But they tasted good, They tasted just the same. So.
I was just thinking that the things that we're seeing in others that we admire, they're also doing them. They're investing in them. They're getting out of it what they put in it. And how many untapped blessings and gifts do we even have? There might be things that I'm probably pretty good at, but I'm too lazy to actually get out and do it. Yeah. Do something with it, or hone that skill or talent or whatever, and take it. Oh, Ollie's chasing after a deer across the yard.
What will he do?
I really
when he
need
catches
to.
It?
I don't know. I feel like I need to holler for him, but that would bust out everybody's eardrums.
He'll come back.
Maybe you're really good at hospitality, but you never go to the trouble to have anybody over. Yeah. You don't feel like it.
You haven't discovered that you're good at it because you haven't done it.
Yeah. And maybe and if you did, you'd find joy in that. You'd be too busy enjoying the gifts that God's given you to pay attention to what other people are doing or not doing that you think you can or can't do.
Because you're jealous of somebody else, their ability, what you think that they can do.
Yeah, this is a painful conversation, Carla. I'm saying all this you, and I'm thinking, good grief, Kathy Pollard.
Me. Yeah, we're stepping on our own toes for sure.
Yes, we are.
But that's the good thing about this podcast. It's been good for us.
Mm-hmm. It really
Self-reflection,
has. I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it.
Me too. And it's fun sitting across from you.
Yeah,
it's a little different.
This has been great. I think we kind of blew the video, but...
Yeah, so it's going to be either half a video or no video, but hopefully it's been recording on your
Hopefully the audio is good.
We may have just had a whole conversation just for fun.
Just us and the birds.
Well, it was a fun conversation.
Yes, it was. So we want to move into a bug.
And I told you, if a bee comes flying at me, I'm going to make an entire fool of myself and fly
and it was me.
myself. Yeah.
Do we want to move into the random question? We're going to do a random question this week. So we decided, do you collect anything?
I don't collect a whole lot of things, but I do have a pretty decent collection of those Starbucks "You Are Here" mugs, or "You Are
Oh,
There." I can't
from
remember what they're called.
traveling different
Yeah,
places.
they're fun because
Hmm.
they your chickens are squawking. I hope Ollie's not into your chickens. Anyway, my Starbucks mugs, I have them from. I don't let myself go buy one just that I have not been.
Hmm.
You know, if I'm in a state, you know, I have one from Kentucky. Well, Kristen Bernithi is the very first one that gave me one from Oklahoma, probably 6 or 7 years ago, and it was so cute because they have the things that the state is known for.
Hmm.
And so I have one from Oklahoma, Texas, of course, Colorado. Got one here in Kentucky. They have them in international places too.
I've
So I
seen
have
them, yeah.
one from Amsterdam, and I can't remember. I have one from Rome. It doesn't look quite the same, but it's fun. That's kind of my collection. I do have a few rolling pins that I collected, but not a whole lot. I tend to try not to
Hmm.
collect too much, but the
Hmm.
Starbucks mugs are my favorite.
So do you have them displayed on pegs around the top of your kitchen, or
No,
what?
I just have a basket that they're
Oh,
sitting in next to the coffee pot because we use them.
because you have a little coffee bar area set up.
Yeah, so
Very nice.
I mean that's the ones that John uses every day. They're not
Hmm.
they're useful collection, not just a useless collection.
I just kind of want to insert in here because me saying coffee bar reminded me that you gave me for my birthday a drawer for my table. Because you were talking about that on your favorite things, and I was like, now I must find one. And you found me one and brought it.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, along with a bunch of other great things.
Your table drawer.
My table drawer. I'm so excited.
Good.
Um, I have a thing for old English dishes, and whether it's English teacups or stoneware or bowls, I don't know what it is about it, and it's just one of those things. I used to collect cookbooks, and I've tried to kind of share those and really only keep the ones that, really only keep the ones that I use. But I don't know what it is, Neil. It's kind of a little joke between us now. Anytime we're in an antique store, I'm always drawn to old dishes, and I turn them over and I'm like, look at this beautiful bowl. Oh, it's from England. Oh, I love it. And I'm envisioning myself mixing batter in it. And I kind of have to go step away from the bowl, step away from the dishes, and Neil, he's like, you really don't need any. Where are you gonna put that?
It's not about need, right?
It's not about need.
So how do you know? Will it always say it's from England?
Yeah, typically on the bottom it'll say
Are there certain
made in
brands?
England, and nah.
You like China or stoneware better?
Well, it used to be China because I especially had a thing for English teacups. And I had a whole collection of those, which I've downsized. But now it's more stoneware. I don't know, there's something about that rustic look that I just love, and that quaint simplicity of it. And I love actually using them, just.
Well, and you probably would use stoneware more than you would use teacups.
Yes.
Because occasionally you'll have tea parties, but that's not a daily thing.
Maybe once every 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I think of your house, I don't think of teacups or china necessarily. But
my hutch by the dining room table used to be filled with all English teacups, every single inch of it.
I don't remember that. Did you get china when you got married?
No, we never even registered anywhere.
Really? I did. I mean, I registered because that's what you did back in the 80s. And I don't think, you were still registered, but you don't see as much of the typical china. You have more useful, and not that china's not useful if you use it, but you typically don't pull that out for your everyday stuff. So
now my grandma did give me a set of dishes that were English.
Yeah.
That's transferware, and I didn't really appreciate. I kept it, but I didn't really appreciate what it was all those years ago, like I do now.
Yeah. Well, it's fun. It's a lot of times when there's memories attached to things. I found that one time at Goodwill, a set of, it may be from England, the same dishes that my dad's mom had that I grew up when I'd go to her house.
Oh, wow.
And so, like, when I walked up on it and saw it, just instant tears came to my eyes. Wasn't hers, but it was the same pattern. So it's funny what those memories do to you.
Very sweet.
Yeah. Well, Ollie has returned.
Ollie came back from deer chasing, so shall we wrap this up?
Yeah, let's do it.
Ladies, we want to thank you so much for listening, and we hope that you have some things to share with us about this topic, this whole idea of being dissatisfied and the solution really being you get out of it what you put in it. What are your thoughts? What are some areas that you might struggle? What are your suggestions, practical suggestions for how we can help ourselves work through it? And until next time, Carla,
Yeah.
keep looking up. It's been great. Love you.